legs are getting weary, my back is getting tight. I'm sitting here in traffic on the Queensboro Bridge tonight, but I don't care.
Welcome to a new episode of Boob Tube Boys. Oh, and we have quite the treat for you this evening. I'm Brian Vaughn. I drew hosting duties this time around. But, as we often say on this show, I don't have to do this shit by myself. I am joined by two other people. One of them is Van Lee. He has a sweet mustache and soul patch.
I've got to interject here and say I bet he wishes you were doing this by yourself.
He does wish that. In fact, Van, speak for yourself. What do you think of my choice to cover King of Queens this week?
Well, I think if you listened to last week's episode of 21 Jump Street, if you managed to survive,
I'm sorry, I told you, I didn't know what I was getting into.
You heard my reaction to you choosing King of Queens, and it was not a pleasant one. I'll just leave right now if that's fine. You guys can do all this.
No, it says here you're under contract to do both of these episodes today.
Yeah, the lawyer did draw that up very specifically.
You've heard his voice already. Spencer Hendricks is also here. Now, what did you think about my decision to cover King of Queens today?
I'm excited, actually. I don't even mind King of Queens, and this is going to be a problem all night. I can't wait to see Van's disgust.
They will be ready and apparent.
You two will be the angel and devil on my shoulder.
I didn't mind watching these at all, honestly. I really didn't.
Without further ado, I guess I'll tell you guys a little bit about King of Queens.
Oh, please do.
Yeah. So the show ran on CBS from
Okay, it was CBS.
Yeah.
I was wondering if I had to guess, it was going to be CBS.
It's very CBS in its trope-laden approach.
Is that their mantra, their channel, or whatever? It's like, if you have to guess, it's CBS.
It's us.
If you're bored, it's CBS. King of Queens ran from 1998 to 2007. So that's 206 episodes across 9 seasons, making it, I believe, the most produced show that we've covered thus far.
It's wildly popular.
Yeah, it's super popular. It was created by Michael J. Wythorn and David Litt.
Are they dead now? Because they should be.
If you have anything to say about it, they will be soon. And one interesting note about the show, it's actually the last American sitcom that debuted in the 90s. Live action, that is. We're not counting The Simpsons here. It was the last one to die, essentially.
Okay.
It made it, of course, all the way till 2007, after debuting, as I said, in 1998. Now, the show is pretty obvious in its intent, which is this is a married couple. They love each other, but they're at each other's throats all the time.
Right.
And in my reading, it came from the honeymooners. That's the derision here, or the derivation.
Real quickly, do you mind if I ask Van a question that we get out of the way? Maybe that'll
think you
lessen
should.
the hostility. Why did you feel so okay with Mad About You, but not King of Queens?
I think Kevin James
It's just Kevin James.
It's Kevin
isn't
James. It really is Kevin James. I could leave it at that. Paul Reiser's an insufferable douchebag. But
We're just coming in hot.
But
Wow,
I don't
this is
know.
a lot of toxicity.
I don't know. I think if you sat them both down and you said, how funny on a scale of 1 to 10 do you think you are? Paul Reiser would go, I'm a 9 or a 10. Whereas Kevin James would go, I'm a fat guy, number 15. fat.
So you are speculating that if asked to comment on their talent, Paul Reiser would say he's as talented as you can be, and Kevin James would tell you about his weight problem and say he's off the scale talented.
He does it on this show, and it makes me so mad because, okay.
It is a lazy joke.
There
that's
was
for
an
sure.
episode of The
is.
Office where Michael falls in a koi pond.
Yes.
And everyone's being relentless and making fun of him. So when he's talking to Jim, he's like, I can't handle it. Jim says, well, look, just go out there and poke fun at yourself. It'll ease the tension. And then Michael takes it too far. That's the idea with Kevin James, except he keeps taking it too far. The first thing he does with every single human being he comes across.
I wish you guys could see Van right now.
Very animated, lots of hand motions.
If he walks up to a human being, he goes, fat guy, fat. Make fun of the fat guy. He tries to get out in front of it, and it's fucking noxious.
Yeah, that is what it is an attempt at self-deprecating humor that often becomes like 30% of the show's content.
Yeah, too much of it. That's fair.
Well, this actually is a perfect segue to talk about Kevin James.
Oh, is it?
Yes, the show's lead. So with all these shows, we often ask ourselves, where did the cast come from? Kevin James and Leah Remini, who play the series leads here, Doug and Carrie Heffernan, neither one were particularly famous before coming into these roles. And I'll tell you guys a little bit about how they got to this point of being King of Queens. Kevin James was, of course, a stand-up comedian beginning in the late 80s. And
I guarantee his opening bit was, now I'm a stand-up comedian, but I'm so fat it hurts my legs. I can't stand up. I have to sit down.
I actually didn't know he was a stand-up comedian. I'd be curious to see what his
he
act
was. I saw part of a stand-up special that he did after King of Queens was on the air. And at the time, all I really remember, it was on Comedy Central, and there was a gag about how long it takes to walk around the ropes in the bank line in a bank lobby.
And it's very physical comedy.
It was very reliant on him physically walking around imaginary ropes, which he is in touch with his body.
Yeah.
In a sense, that sounds disgusting. But Kevin James does have a certain physicality about him that you can see why he drew attention from networks.
I don't have anything against Kevin James, unlike you, Van.
Oh, I do.
I don't.
I do.
So Kevin James was a stand-up. He got some people's attention. Eventually moves to New York. He was featured on a couple of things, like
Hitch.
the new Candid Camera show
What?
in the early 90s.
What is this again?
And
New-handed camera?
the new Candid Camera
Oh,
show.
okay, I understand.
So
now.
Kevin James, because he's kind of a physical comedian, would go try to trick people, whatever. I'm sure he was plenty good at it. He also was apparently on the MTV game show Sand Blast.
What happens in Sandblast?
I don't know, but I want to watch it now. His big break, though, came when he got some guest starring appearances on Everybody Loves Raymond.
Really?
Oh.
Yes. So as Doug Heffernan, also.
What?
Yes.
It was the character?
It was the character
So-
of Doug
This
Heffernan.
is a Frasier thing
King
going
of Queens
on.
is
Yeah.
a spin-off. Yeah, it's exactly
Yet
what
again,
I
a
was thinking.
Xena Frasier type thing.
Interesting.
Yeah, so he appeared in just a few episodes, and
What are you doing here, Kevin James?
yeah, Brad Garrett weighed in on Kevin James.
Look at Kevin James, you look kind of fat. I'm the leading star of this show for some reason.
I'm Peter Boyle, and my wife's food is shitty.
I think I've seen maybe 2 or 3 episodes of Everybody Loves Raymond.
I've seen about 100.
And I want to say, I knew immediately who you guys were talking about just in that all 3 of those characters, just from the few that I've seen. So that speaks to something.
I'm sure we'll cover that show, which is sort of a sister show to this one in the New York area.
Apparently, yeah, I didn't know that, though.
Yeah,
But
Oh,
that's
really?
interesting.
King of Queens takes place in New York? They don't bash you over the face with it at every opportunity.
No, I
I'm
don't-
on the stupid bridge.
Yeah, somehow it takes place in Queens. Who'd have thunk it? Whereas I believe Everybody Loves Raymond is like a Long Island show or something to that
More ritzy.
extent.
Yeah, they seemed a little more well off. They weren't struggling.
Well,
were
Ray's
they?
a sports writer.
I didn't know that.
Yeah.
Brad Garrett's a cop. I know
And
that.
Brad
I
Garrett's
didn't know
a cop.
that either. Yeah, there's
Yeah,
very
Doris
little I know.
Roberts is very concerned about Brad Garrett's well-being on the force.
Well, you know, I had to go beat up some minorities today at work.
Executives, though, with Kevin James, getting back on the subject of Kevin James, Van's favorite subject. He's shaking his head right now. Kevin James was able to audition for network execs. They liked what they saw and the ability to make another working-class comedy with James at the center. Leah Remini ended up auditioning for the wife part, the too attractive for the husband part, and she got that role. She had previously been an actor who'd appeared in several bit parts throughout her career. I knew her from being Stacey Carosi on Saved by the Bell Hawaiian Years or whatever.
Wow.
She was Zach's girlfriend.
I didn't know that.
Yeah, and she's sporting the New England accent in that as well, so that
Is
must
that,
be
is
legit
that how
accent.
she actually? I was gonna say maybe that's how she actually sounds.
I
Could
think
be.
it must be. She also had a guest role on Who's the Boss with Tony Danza.
Who is the boss?
Well, that's up for
Tony
debate.
Danza.
It might be Tony Danza.
The man whose characters always have to be named Tony because he won't respond otherwise.
No, he doesn't know to. If someone addresses him, you need to be saying Tony, just repeatedly. He'll fill in the rest of the blanks. Leah Remini also actually auditioned for Courtney Cox's part in Friends, but did not get the role. Shortly thereafter, she would get this much better role as Carrie on King of Queens.
Much better.
This
That's
is
it's hard
interesting.
to decide which of
Yeah,
those
I don't
roles
even
is
know if
better.
you meant that or you're being facetious. I can't
Well,
tell.
I would say actually somehow she probably profited less off this role.
I could say more, though, because she's one of 2, whereas
True.
in Friends, it's a cast of 5, essentially. Now, there is Patton Oswalt and all the other characters,
Yeah.
but I feel
Well,
like on
Friends
Friends,
has
those
that-
5 were there the whole time.
Yeah, and
Every
Friends has
episode.
that monkey also that
Yeah,
David
Ross.
Schwimmer has. Yeah, no, just David Schwimmer himself. The show was very, very successful. Number 19 in the rankings during season 4. It was popular throughout its run, but it was peaking somewhere in the middle of the 9-season run. It is still in syndication, still something of a staple. You can find it on TV Land, networks kind of that ilk. And Kevin James, in 2006 at the Emmys, was nominated for Outstanding Actor in a Comedy Series.
How'd that go?
He lost to Tony Shalhoub of Monk.
Yeah, have either of you seen Monk?
No, I haven't, but I've heard it's good.
Yeah.
I really haven't. So yeah, King of Queens, successful pretty much throughout its entire run. It had its two big stars in James and Rimini. Rimini, and we'll touch on this now, has an interesting personal backstory.
Oh, yes.
In that she was in the Church of Scientology from the age of 9 up until 2013, after the King of Queens run had ended. And that's when she left the church.
At least she figured it out at some point. That's good on her. I'm happy that she does not still stand by it.
I know that she left the church, but I don't know a whole lot about her story of leaving it. I know there's a documentary or something.
Yeah,
or a TV
she
show
wrote
even,
wrote a book.
She went,
also.
she went way out there. So I'm assuming she feels very passionately about it at this point, and that's good. That's admirable, because if she was kind of born into it, that's almost like brainwashing in a sense.
And she was.
She almost didn't have a choice.
And it's 100% brainwashed.
It is cool that she did recognize that. As much as I don't understand Scientology at all because it's not real, I don't think that it would be that easy to do that, so that's cool.
It is amazing. She was in it from age 9 to 43, essentially, and was able to get out.
Good job.
Yeah, good job, Leah.
I think Xenu's going to strike Spencer down because he's like, it's not real. Come on, you got to get on your planet or whatever.
Yeah, you go write in your journal about how bad you are for masturbating or whatever.
Wait, where's my Z meter? Or E meter? I can't remember.
How many theatins are running through your blood, or whatever they measure things by? Rimini also was a little bit in the inner circle of Scientology, as she's a famous actress, which in all cults seems to mean, oh, you get to hang out with the big dogs. So what apparently first sparked her separation from Scientology, she had been investigating on her own, or wondering about the famous case of Shelley Miscavige, David Miscavige, the leader of Scientology now. Shelley
pure
is his
evil, too.
Yes, just pure evil. His wife, no one's really seen her in the public eye in years and years. And Leah Remini was questioning that, including to Miscavige's face at Tom Cruise and Katie Holmes' wedding, which she was attending, and that started the descent for her. And she eventually.
I wish I'd been there.
Yeah. Oh man, that would have been great.
What a gala!
All the stars you would meet. Beck might be there. I think he's a Scientologist.
He is, yeah.
I guess eventually over time she just continued to grow disenfranchised with, hey, I think these people are full of shit.
So this was like a full Scientologist sort of get together. Like everyone there was of that.
Probably a lot of them were at the wedding just because Tom Cruise is a Scientologist.
The Scientologist.
Yeah.
So I wonder if this is like that Hercules episode where as soon as she brought up the points, everyone's like, she's right. They've been lying to us. That sort of thing.
We're all going to leave Scientology in the dust, which would just be amazing.
He tricked us.
Time to go drink out of the fountain.
I'm thirsty.
That previously
Also,
was only for Scientologists.
Tom Cruise is a centaur in this scenario.
I wish.
Hey, he could probably pull it off.
You'd be a little centaur, but sure.
Another couple of quick show notes that I just found kind of interesting. Kevin James' actual wife, Stefania de la Cruz, appears in 4 different episodes of King of Queens as different characters in bit parts. So that's kind of interesting.
I'm going to look up what his wife looks like.
Yeah, I actually have not done that, so we'll get your report back as I tell you how the series ends.
Okay.
Please do.
Yeah.
There's nothing I want to hear more about than how it stops finally.
No, so by the end of King of Queens, the couple, Doug and Carrie, are
They've
pretty
gotten
much...
weary to this point.
Yeah, they're very weary, their backs are tight, and they hate each other. And that's kind of been the case since the start of the show, but the financial struggles, the infertility struggles that Carrie has at one point in the show, all of them start to take a toll on the couple. They're at each other's throats, but don't worry, maybe their marriage can work. So in the series finale, they've decided to adopt a baby from China while still hating each other. And
that's always what fixes marital problems.
Yeah, baby fixes the marriage.
Yeah.
It's totally fair to the child.
It's always
well.
worked.
So Doug and Carrie go fly to China to pick the baby up and essentially solve all their problems during the course of the flight. And like, oh, you know what? Water under the bridge. We love each other. We're meant to be together. They land and get the baby, and then Carrie finds out she's also pregnant.
Oh,
So
couple
two
babies.
kids at once, and then we get an epilogue scene where they're happy with 2 kids a little bit later, and Arthur, Jerry Stiller's character, he's still living with them because he had tried to marry Spence's mom, that's Patton Oswalt's character, and it didn't work out.
In this final season, though, we have Kevin James and Leia Remini, their characters are really fighting. Like, this is almost divorce territory. Is it that
and
bad?
I think that, like, I actually had heard a rumor that the show ended with divorce.
And then they decided to film an alternate that was more uplifting.
Yeah, and I don't know if there's, like, truth in that or not.
I was actually expecting you to say that. I was expecting you to say that they pulled a surprise ending there and it didn't work out.
That actually would have taken some nerve from
balls.
King of Queens. He had to do that on a CBS show to just say, look, this didn't work out. We had
You know,
a somewhat
sometimes
good
marriages
run.
don't work out.
Yeah, sometimes marriages don't work out. Sometimes life can't be based around what size of TV you have. as
Sometimes
Kevin
you don't
James,
get 2 kids.
Yeah, sometimes you need to wear something other than a nameless jersey with a number on it, which is one of Kevin James's many uniforms. So that's kind of an overview of the series, King of Queens, which again lasted for a fucking decade.
Yeah, this is more mainstream than I think anything we've covered so far. So anyone who's listening to this has probably seen it, which is
You've probably...
not the case for a lot of the things we've done so far.
Yeah, you've probably encountered it. Without further ado, let's talk about this episode. It is Season 2, Episode 14. It is called Blockbuster. That's 2 separate words. We're not talking about a defunct video chain here.
My brain immediately was like, okay, prepare yourself mentally to discuss this scene, that scene. Remember to talk about this. And it's caused me to get upset. I don't have my heart rate watch on.
Yeah, I was
if I
gonna
looked
say-
at it, the heart rate would be elevated.
Oh,
right
yeah.
now.
We need some
Definitely.
blood pressure medication for Van for this episode.
Well,
and
I mean,
the next
yes,
one.
but that's also a different story.
This episode's missing some of the series regulars that would appear later on. Most notably, and this is a huge bummer, Jerry Stiller's character Arthur does not appear in this episode or the next one we cover.
That's too
Too
bad.
bad.
Yeah, it really is, because he's great. He is credited but doesn't appear. The same goes for Deacon and Kelly.
Who are in the next one.
They're in the next episode.
And not in a flattering fashion.
No, but they are best friends of Doug and Carrie. They don't show up here.
Oh, whose dad is Jerry Stiller? Is he Doug's dad?
He
or
is Carrie's dad.
That's fine. But if they said he was Doug's dad, looking at the 2 human beings, I would go, okay, yep.
No, Doug just puts up with him because Carrie insists that, they house him for the time.
Right, of course. And, they learn to love each other.
That's like 2/3 of the comedy is Doug and Arthur.
Their conflict.
bickering.
Yeah, them playing off one another. Also absent that we'll see in the next episode is Doug's cousin Danny.
Oh, boy.
Okay, was he on was he on the cast
He's
the
a
whole
series
time?
regular,
Oh,
yeah.
boy.
I'm not going to discuss
No,
him
let's
until
not.
we get there.
Let's not.
No, and then
because-
also Doug's friend Richie, who's in the show a lot early and then not as much later. And then, of course, Carrie's friend Holly, who does appear in the second episode.
The
also,
Mad About You actress. Or no, I'm sorry, the
Mad TV actress
TV
Nicole
actress,
Sullivan, yes. So they're not in this episode, but Doug and Carrie are. We open on the streets of Queens with Doug driving his IPS truck. Yes, Doug works for a UPS ripoff. What can Brown do for Doug?
That was actually going to be a question. It's very clearly not UPS, but it is UPS.
Yeah.
They've got the little shorts, the brown outfits. What's it called?
IPS, International Parcel Service.
Thinly veiled.
Yeah, they don't even try.
No.
And the uniforms are hideous and not flattering to anyone who wears them, let alone Kevin James.
I remember seeing in the next episode, his friend, the tall, dark guy,
Deacon.
Deacon.
Tall, dark guy.
Well, he is. And
He is, that's true.
He must be like 6'8".
6'5"?
big.
Yeah, like at least 6'5".
He was wearing his IPS uniform, and it just looked like a little boy in a Boy Scouts uniform.
Yeah,
'cause
it's
they're
all
just
brown.
awkward. Yeah.
It's like a brown top and brown shorts.
So I want you to describe this first scene here that's happening that you're getting ready.
Yeah.
And I have a thought about what happened as a result of this specific scene.
Absolutely. So Doug's just at work. He's in a good enough mood. He pulls up behind a school bus in his work truck.
Of course.
And some kids wave at him out of the back of the bus. Doug thinks they want him to honk, so he honks, and then things take a dark turn because the kids start taunting him by blowing on the glass. And then they give him the bird. They flip him off, but without extending the middle finger because this is CBS.
Right, you can't do that.
You skipped over something exceptionally important.
Oh,
here.
let's get into it.
All right.
When the kids initially start making fun of him, they do that thing where they put their mouth up against the glass and blow, and their cheeks poof up.
And get COVID. That's what I
So-
was thinking the whole time.
What does does Kevin James do? He goes, yeah, I'm a fat guy. I'm the fat guy. Look at me, big and fat. Ha ha ha, fat, 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 fat. He
You are
immediately
right.
goes to it.
You are right. He
Every
does go
time.
he goes for the fat joke.
And they didn't even do anything
while
like
he's
that.
alone.
Yeah.
He's not even being self-deprecating to anyone else. He's the only guy in the IPS truck.
I also want to say, I believe this is why school buses have tinted windows now. Because
Do
of
they?
It
this
probably is.
interaction. Yes, I have noticed this.
That's fascinating. I haven't noticed that, but that's got to be it.
Yeah, I feel it's all because of Doug Heffernan.
Yeah, because by the end of this scene, Doug is screaming.
He is fucking mad at these kids.
He's livid at these kids. They hold up a piece of paper that says, "You suck," which is what really sets him off, and he starts screaming. And I mean, this is the most clever retort possible, that he doesn't suck, but in fact, they suck.
You really told them.
Yeah.
This is their cold open, which they don't do in the next episode.
No.
And it's
Maybe they
exceptionally
shouldn't.
lazy,
I was
so
gonna
they
say,
shouldn't.
yeah. I'm not sure it works.
Yeah, if this is what cold opens are in The King of Queens, we don't need them. And we cut, as you guys suggested, we cut straight to the theme song after this, which is maybe my least favorite theme song of any sitcom. You guys heard it in the intro. It's called Baby All My Life I Will Be Driving Home to You. It is called that whole thing.
No, it isn't.
Yeah.
What?
It's by Billy Vera and the Beaters. And I don't know when this song was recorded, but it sounds ripped from, like, do-it-yourself home studio 1975 or something. I don't know. It sounds like if someone heard Bruce Springsteen and said, "Oh, I can do that really badly." I don't know. It's really, really brutal, and it sets the working class tone of the show.
Oh, I forgot to mention, Katie has watched every episode of King of Queens.
That's just incredible. And, like, I've seen a lot. I know Spencer has as well.
I've seen quite a few.
Certainly
not
not all.
every. Yeah, I was going to say, I don't know how Katie did that. That's amazing.
I'd say I've watched less than 5.
She's a real trooper to watch all of them.
So does she like it, or did she just kind of
Is
put
she a
up with
queen
it?
head?
No, in fact, I was like, why? Why did you do that? And she's like, I don't know. It was just kind of on. I was like, well, did you
I
enjoy
don't know.
it? And she said, not really. So
I wish she just left it. I don't know. I don't know why I did that.
That's the problem with TV, is that's kind of most things people watch. It's like, whoa, was it good?
it happened
It
to
was
be
there.
on.
It
I
was
sunk
on.
a few hundred hours in, but it's not that big of a deal. In the credits, we get scenes of Doug driving the old workmobile. Carrie's drinking out of a water bottle. Doug mauls Carrie in a field. And
all kinds of stuff
then
happens.
Arthur beats this kid at chess. And then at the end, Doug drops his
an ice
lemon
cream
ice.
cone or something.
Yeah. It's the whole intro is just, it's not good at all.
They
And-
put in that scene from Hitch where he gets mustard on his shirt, hoping
Yeah.
no one would notice, and no one does.
They basically, the ending of the credits basically is that scene.
Yeah.
It's Kevin James dropping food.
So he's clumsy and fat, and she's hot
Yeah, that's and sassy. That's basically what we get
and
right
a
away.
Scientologist.
Well, okay, what I'll say too, I had this
In
in
the
my notes
show.
later in the show. She is, okay, usually with this type of show, with the bumbling buffoon husband, the wife is a source of reason and sometimes likable.
Yeah.
I don't find her likable
She's
at
not.
all.
She's awful, and even her accent that we alluded to earlier is
obnoxious.
grating. It's grating. It was like, ugh, shut up. Doug's right.
Yeah, she's very abrasive a lot of the time.
Yeah, and she's really she often manipulates him and kind of pressures him into things. And
Yeah, they both are really manipulative.
they don't have a good marriage. I don't
No,
think that it's good for them
again,
to have
they
two
should have
babies
gotten-
at the end of the show.
Yeah, they should have gotten divorced.
Anyway,
We're in the Heffernan kitchen once the credits end, and Carrie is preparing the largest party sub I've ever seen in my life.
6 feet, right? I think they say it.
I believe
It's
it's
longer than 6 feet, but they might have
It
said
looks
that.
like it's
so?
about
Did you see
100.
that thing? That thing's huge.
How long do you think it was? How long do they make subs?
Well, she's making it, so technically she can make it whatever she wants. I would vouch that was a 9-foot sub.
Wow, taller than Deacon, then, the friend that will appear on the
Yeah,
next episode,
Barely.
even.
Just barely.
Well, Doug walks in on this sub sandwich making, and he's
It
got.
sounds like he walked in on his wife, like sleeping with someone. Doug walks in on the sandwich.
Well, go ahead and play the clip, because it kind of is like that.
Whoa. I had a dream like this once, only you were naked and the bread was Shania Twain.
What does that even mean? So
I'm telling you, it's a threesome.
well, sort of, but also
No, with bread.
The bread is Shania Twain. So in his scenario, Carrie...
Is this Catholicism? Like you drink the wine, which is Jesus' blood. The bread is, in fact, Shania Twain.
Drink of Shania Twain's body for eternal salvation.
I actually don't think he was including Carrie in that at all. I think it was just the bread and Shania Twain. He just wanted to fuck both
I
of them.
think Carrie's naked putting meat on Shania Twain, who's the bread.
Okay, so you're a UPS driver. That digests
IPS.
me
Yeah,
much.
let's not get the company wrong.
Oh, I'm sorry. Excuse me. IPS.
It don't impress you much? Does
Well-
it make you feel like a woman?
Can we at least agree that Doug clearly wants to have sex with bread, if nothing else?
Which I think he makes really clear with all his self-deprecating fat jokes, to be fair.
But the problem here is, of course, that they don't have enough meat, right?
No, and that is the
How
problem.
could you? A
Carrie-
9-foot sub?
Well, here's my question then. The way they present
meat
this,
is
she's
that?
like, oh, I didn't have enough meat. I didn't know how to anticipate this, blah, blah, blah. The way they say it, it almost sounds like they just can't get any more meat. So are they
There's just no way.
poor?
Well, they
'Cause
are
you can't make that
selectively.
much
I mean, you
money.
can buy great value, just like smoked turkey or whatever.
Like,
It's
what
not
does
that
an
much.
IPS driver make?
Yeah, I was like, why don't you guys go out and get more meat? But it is a problem, and Doug is super upset about it. Like, we're big, fat, out-of-shape ex-football players. We need a lot of meat. And
He does say that, yeah,
that's
directly.
the big
Pretty
reveal
accurate.
is Doug's high school football team, they're in their 30s now, they're coming over for a bit of a reunion that night, hence the party sub.
Does what's-her-name have a job in this show?
She does.
Oh, I
She
didn't know, yeah.
Yeah, she's a legal secretary, and then I believe later works in real estate as a secretary.
Yeah, it's not overt, though. They don't really talk about that much, at least in the ones we saw.
No. This is exciting for Doug. His former football team, which won the big game in 1985, is coming over that night. He hasn't seen everybody in a long time. He's leafing through his yearbook and beckons Carrie to come over and see him, quote-unquote, buff and beautiful.
That is a joke that actually annoyed me like it would Van, in the sense of, let's not make it any more obvious that this is fat guy and hot girl.
Yeah.
Let's not do that.
And one of many lines where Kevin James alludes to the fact that his prime years are behind him and it's all going to be over soon in a fiery ball of death.
I'm looking up what Kevin James looked like as a youth.
He was buff and beautiful.
he
knows
wasn't.
this.
I think he kind of could have been. Hold on.
No, he's
You see it
all
there?
right.
Right,
Van
where
is
Van's
totally
pulling up on the
convinced.
screen.
Look at this one
Yeah,
here.
that's
So did he
Definitely.
actually wrestle?
I could see it
I could
based
see
on that
him being
picture.
like a high
Actually, he
school
does
wrestler.
look rather. He's got a strong jaw.
What is this about? Is this him or is this just a random body?
It might be
If that
Bigfoot.
was him, holy shit.
Carrie comes over to look at this photo of Doug, though, and the thing is, she's more attracted to, and this is the big joke, Derek Broadnax, who was the school's running back. She points at him and is like, look at this tall drink of water. And Doug says, hey, Derek's going to be there tonight, but Derek may have been the running back that scored the game-winning touchdown, but I'm the guy who set up the block. I did the block that enabled Derek to run all the way to the end zone for the touchdown. I'm sort of a hero, and by the way, there's going to be a reporter from the St. Gregory Alumni magazine here tonight, too.
You know, as happens all the time, the reporters want to write about these big games in
Yeah.
high school football. From
And is
25 years
his
ago.
job, his only job, to work for the St. Gregory High School Alumni newspaper?
Well, as we find out later when we see the reporter, his actual day job is lead singer and bassist of Rush, which is pretty cool that they gave him that job as
Yeah,
a
he did
reporter.
dye his hair blonde, at least, for this episode. And in this scene with Carrie, we just see Doug relentlessly mentioning his big block, my big block, da-da-da-da-da. And then casually mentions a guy named Tom Busterman. Well, he was on the high school football team as well, but he's in a wheelchair now from a cliff diving accident, so don't stare when he gets here tonight. And I actually did like Carrie's response here that was essentially like, you think I'm going to stare at a guy in a wheelchair?
What made me infuriated at this moment was that Doug's whole thing is like, hey, don't point and stare at the poor guy in the wheelchair. And then immediately, as soon as that guy shows up, Doug acts like no human being would
Ever.
act around
Yeah.
someone in a wheelchair.
He is so flustered.
It's anger-inducing how much of a piece of shit he acts like to this poor guy. And to that point, I'm skipping ahead a little bit, but that guy in the wheelchair, I mean, look, I haven't met that many people who've had injuries like that or huge injuries, which causes issues with mobility and so forth. But every time I've met someone who has had something like that happen to them, They don't point it out every 30 seconds like this guy does. The first thing he does is like, how are you? Great, except for, the fact that my legs don't work no more. They would never do that. It's part of their life. They overlook it. That's not something they want to talk about. But in this show, both Doug points it out,
I was gonna say
and this guy talks about it a lot.
Well, and it goes back to the part where they have Doug constantly mention his weight, and they have this guy constantly mention this. I'm not drawing a complete comparison between the two. I'm just saying, there's not a whole lot of subtlety.
They just
involved.
scream whatever it is.
The broad strokes are yelled at the audience. Speaking of which, in walks Patton Oswalt through the back door as his character Spence Olchin. And it was delightful to see Patton Oswalt, a
I wish
comedian
the
we all
audience had
love.
clapped. I wish they, like how they did in some of those scenes.
Yeah.
They call him Spence, but is his name Spencer then,
No,
right?
it is
don't think
Spence.
so.
I
Oh,
checked.
okay.
Yeah. And he is playing up the fact that he was a nerd in high school, and still at this point, he's wearing a Hawaiian shirt and a big furry brown coat. He only wants to show up tonight for the alumni game so he can scream at the football players who bullied him when he was the equipment manager in high school. And apparently we get a little bit of a glimpse here that Doug just let it all happen.
Well, my favorite part about this, the implication then, because Patton Oswalt's like, I seem to remember you were there, Doug, when all this went down.
Yeah.
And Doug is like, hey, look, I was only there to make sure no one was...
Out of hand.
He doesn't say penetrated, but he implies that football team would have brutally raped Patton Oswalt
Which,
if not for Doug.
maybe they would have.
Yeah,
It's a different time in the 70s.
Yeah, boys will be boys.
Yeah, you were hung upside down by the goalpost, but no one anally entered you. So I did my job.
Yay for me, the fat guy.
After Patton Oswalt launches his valid complaints about how he was treated in high school, we get a little outdoor street shot to break the cuts, which this show does a lot since it only takes place inside the one location.
They're also filmed with a weird camera, the outdoor scenes,
Yeah.
because they do not look the same as the actual footage. It's almost like a cheap camera for the establishment shots. It's just jarring.
Yeah, and you
I
get a
found it weird.
little blast of probably Billy Vera and the Breakers guitar in there too. We're in the Heffernan living room now, and the party has started. Some of the guests are starting to arrive, others have already arrived, and this is where we meet the 3 football players from Doug's team that are going to be the most prominent in this episode. You have Derek Broadnex, the tall, strapping running back, and then you have Billy Kellner, who is Doug-shaped, I would say.
Is that the guy who looks like a smaller version of the Big Show?
I would call it, yes. Or maybe that comedian Ralphie May a little bit,
Oh,
a
yeah.
smaller version of him. I would best describe him as walking New Jersey, for anyone who's curious. He talks a little bit like this. And then, of course, Cedeno is the other guy that arrives at the party at this point. And they are, as I said, the 3 main alumni we're focusing on, aside from Tom Busterman, who will arrive shortly. Doug makes a joke, hey, are you guys out on parole? And we get the guys being guys sense of humor thing here. Carrie comes in and says hi to everybody. Doug busts her on wanting to have sex with Broadnax. She plays it off
well.
Yeah, she plays it off great, and she's like, you're going to blow it for me, Doug. At this point, Carrie's kind of likable. That
She
will
was
change
certainly
later.
more likable in this episode
Ooh.
than the next one.
Well,
Yes.
let's wait on that.
Definitely so. The coach walks in, the high school coach, and this is our first scene.
Woo!
Yeah.
I have a note. Coach is creepy AF.
Do you know what he said? Do you remember what he said?
I
when
just
came
know
in?
he touched someone's ass and
He immediately grabs Broadnex and says, I see you're still rock hard.
When he walks in the house, the first thing he goes, hey, is this where the chowderheads are meeting?
Why also, if you're having a reunion of your team, why do you invite the
The
coach?
coach?
I know.
I don't think you would do that.
And he's just walking around grab-assing everybody there.
Looking
And,
like Jeffrey Dahmer the whole time.
yeah, this does lead to another kind of funny scene where he walks up to Carrie to meet Carrie, and she backs against the snack table to avoid getting her ass grabbed, which I thought was kind of a nice little prompt. This coach was played by a guy named Mookie Barker. And
good
he
name.
only seems to appear in Kevin James vehicles, such
Do you
as
think this is like his friend or his
I've
mentor?
got to think so, and that pops up throughout this
Interesting.
series.
Yeah, that's weird.
But he was in Here Comes the Boom, The Zookeeper, and of course Paul Blart.
The zookeeper. I forgot about that one. Oh, okay, real quick. I have a thing. I had a whole gag planned out because last week with the 21 Jump Street episodes, I wanted to, quote, ease the tension. So I played goofy clips and had fun facts for you guys throughout the episode.
Yeah.
So the thing I was going to do was say, oh, Brian, it wasn't fair for me to do that to Spencer and not to you. So for today's shows, I want to play the funniest bits from Paul Blart Mall Cop.
Just the whole thing. How are we going to have time?
I decided I'm going to look up these Paul Blart bits. So I researched it, and on YouTube there's one video that says the best... Hold on, let me find the note.
The best of the worst.
It says the best funniest moments. Paul Blart best funniest moments is the title of the video. It's 4 minutes long. So that tells you there's not a whole lot of best funniest moments in there.
It's the Paul Blart supercut.
Now the other thing is this is an audio format. This is a podcast. You can't see anything.
No.
You can do visual gags if you appropriately do it the right way. There were only 15 seconds of that entire 4-minute video that was usable because everything Kevin James does is physical comedy.
Pratfalls.
It's him falling over and being fat. So I only have one thing to do, but I'm going to go ahead and do it here. So here's our little bit from Paul Blart Mall Cop.
Are you going to have pie?
Not tonight, Ma. I'm just kidding. Yeah, I'm gonna want some pie.
You.
No, I meant now, Ma. Get the pie now.
Oh.
So, I see Paul Blart has the same sense of humor as the King of Queens.
Paul Blart isn't. I've seen the original Paul Blart.
I
saw it in
I have
theater.
seen it. Yeah, I watched that entire first movie.
I watched it with Chris Barboa.
Man, I'm a Blart virgin.
I can't.
It's just an hour and 36 minutes of fat joke. That's all it is. There is nothing else to that movie.
He's mostly writing his
segue.
Yeah.
It's reprehensible. So that's it. That's the only funny, quote unquote, thing I could find from Paul Blart. I have nothing else for the rest of these shows. I just wanted to get
I'm
that
glad
out
we
there.
got that in, and then maybe we can insert some whoop, whoop, ah, and like falling down stairs sounds for probably what the rest of that video actually was.
Let's take a quick break here so I can maybe recharge my tolerance level for Kevin James. Maybe I'll be able to handle this a little bit more when we get back.
Life I will be driving home to you.
At this point, we see Doug beckon someone to go into the kitchen with him. Hey, somebody, one of you ladies want to help bring the beer out? He says that. There's a lot of jokes like that. A lot of Queens jokes, I would imagine. And Broadnex goes in the kitchen with Doug to help with the beer. Spence enters at this point to tell off Kellner and Cedeno, but they're immediately nice. They're like, look, we didn't like ourselves back then. We were trying to prove ourselves. We bullied you. We're sorry. That was honestly terrible. Spence angrily thanks them and goes into the kitchen because he was looking forward to telling them off.
Now, Patton Oswalt, to his credit, does a great job here. He gives that pained expression of, I've planned this for 20 years.
Yeah.
And then it was just swept out from underneath me, and he's just like, I'm going to go in the kitchen. He did a great job there.
He does. He has that little simmering rage underneath, which comes out in his stand-up sometimes. He's very good there. And one quick note on this scene. At the end of it, Broadnax comes back out of the kitchen with the beer Doug asked to help bring in, and he just has like 1 6-pack of bottles he starts handing out.
That'll handle it, yeah.
It's like, I don't think he needed help carrying that in, but whatever.
Is he the one that looks like Jonathan Coachman?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, he definitely is. At this point, we're back in the kitchen, and we meet Tom Busterman, who is the cliff diving accident man who used to play on the football team. He comes in through the back door in his wheelchair, and Doug greets him, and as Van said earlier, acts as awkward as you possibly could act, stumbling over all his words.
It's awkward on both sides here, too. This was just an awkward scene that was in no way funny.
Very
Yeah, I
cringy.
hated watching this scene. There's a point where Doug asks, how's that working out for you? About being in a wheelchair, then apologizes. And then he basically says, man, I should really walk more too, and then apologizes for that. The whole scene's just supposed to be, as they would say now, cringe comedy. Yeah, that sort of thing. We go back into the Heffernan living room, and the alumni reporter's there now to talk to the team about what happened, go over how the big game went down against Power Memorial High School in the 85 All-City Finals. And as Van said, this reporter is Geddy Lee with blonde dye in his hair and hoop earrings.
It's...
Tinted glasses
It
also.
sure feels like the King of Queens writers were like, we need to do a reporter. What does a reporter look like?
Well, I've never seen one. Let's just make it up.
Yeah, they looked for the traits that a football guy, high school football guy, would think a reporter might have, and then crammed it into this dude who, again, the absurdity of someone from the alumni group writing about some game from 25 years
Yeah.
ago that no one aside
No one
from
would
people
even
there cares
remember.
about. Yeah.
Yeah, as we'll see, no one really remembers it very well.
Everyone here, by the way, is obnoxiously chewing gum like Johnny
Yeah.
Depp did in the last show. They're all just like the whole time. And that's one of my pet peeves. I hate that. Chew with your mouth closed.
Especially like on a TV show,
Yeah.
which seems kind of unusual. The reporter is going over the game with the team, and we get the setup. It's 23-17. St. Gregory's down, and Power Memorial has the ball. Whew. The reporter asked the coach how he felt at the time. He says he was confident, but we know he's not because Doug lets go. The coach actually threw a can of Pepsi at him during the game, which my big question was, so is this team fueled as premium athletes by Pepsi?
Yeah.
It's just as different. He has different forms of motivating his players.
Yeah,
Sometimes
I like
he
to
grabs
give him
their
Pepsi.
ass. Sometimes
Yeah.
he throws a Pepsi at him.
Sometimes
only-
I shove a finger in the hole.
If only Pepsi Max were around then, because we all know that's the best way to be extreme.
They might have had clear Pepsi around 85. I have no idea.
I've had clear Pepsi.
How was it?
Well, it was
Clear?
20 plus years ago. I liked it, but I was also an 8-year-old, so who knows how it really was.
We have no
There's
way
been
of
a
knowing.
lot of different iterations of Pepsi. Wasn't there? What was the like a crystal? Or,
Yeah,
That's
Crystal
the clear
Pepsi.
one, Crystal Pepsi.
That's
is that what they
it's
called it?
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah, I never had that. So what was it?
Pepsi.
I genuinely can't tell you because it was so long ago. What I remember, I think it was... No, I can't even guess. But what I remember from that time period is there are two things I had in spades. It was Crystal Pepsi and candy cigarettes.
Oh,
Ugh.
wow. You were really living
Ew.
on the edge.
Did you do them together?
Yeah, of course.
Ugh.
It's like,
Oh,
like the
man.
Kramer. You got two cigarettes and
You're
then
out-
you're drinking the Pepsi at the same time.
Yeah, chain eating candy cigarettes.
Delicious. Sounds like 8-year-old me.
We find out at this point that the game turns out the way it does because of the people we've already met, conveniently enough. Kellner forced a fumble. Cedeno recovered it. This gives St. Gregory the ball. Hand off to Broadnax. He starts heading down the field, but there's Matuka on the opposing team, who we learn is a gigantic 6'4", 240-pound lineman. Whew! But thankfully, someone's there to block Matuka, clear the field, and Broadnax scores the game-winning touchdown. The coach doesn't remember who gave the block. Doug tries to spur him on, and then the coach gives the credit to Tom Busterman, the football player in the wheelchair, not Doug, and this sends Doug into a fucking spiral.
Well, I think this show did an excellent job showcasing the people who peaked in high school. The
Yes,
guy who had this
it
one
did.
game, and that's all they will ever think about for the rest of their life because it's the only time they did something monumental or unique, and they can't let it go.
Yeah.
And I think they did a great job showing
Absolutely.
Doug doing that.
We kind of got into this a little bit in our bonus episode tonight, which is a fun thing that we do before we record these episodes. We talked about how there is an element of, you can kind of relate to the fact when somebody is frustrated and they know they're right. And I put a note in my phone that blocking is very important in football. And Doug knows he did it, so he knows he's not insane. It's like his whole team is gaslighting him here. So I actually kind of put a note like, we've all been there where we know we did something and nobody else remembers it that way, but he knows it's true. Now, the means he goes to prove this is obviously very fucked up, but that's where it makes your worst side come out. But it's understandable because he knows what happened. He knows he did it. He shouldn't have to tell everyone, hey, isn't that cool that I did that? But nobody knows that he did. So I felt a lot of sympathy for him in this one, despite how they played it out where he's a complete asshole and ruins his own party over the thought that nobody knows how great his block was. But he knows he did it. Nobody else knows he did. And it did come across very well that it's like, fuck, why does nobody want to give him the credit?
The show definitely captures that feeling of, I know I'm telling the truth, everyone else thinks I'm lying, and it's so frustrating I can't get that out, I can't get this information out. However, it does become, as Van said, a descent into madness, because the only thing Doug cares about is his previous high school glory, which is terribly sad when you actually get down to it.
Well, and of course he's holding on to that because, you see in his mind what he's become. And, that was his heyday, so to speak. So he's like, don't take that away from me. Don't take that away from me.
This is all I have. Even
Exactly.
though, I mean, he should think he has more, I guess. I don't know. Based on the fact that this show, he's supposed to be at least happy with his marriage, although it's never depicted that way
No, he's not.
on screen.
They don't ever show even a liking for one another.
Oh, man,
No.
They manipulate each other like crazy.
just constantly. We're back in the kitchen. Doug's telling Carrie about this now as she is still working on that fucking sandwich.
9-foot sub.
And Doug, of course, makes a wheelchair joke and says Busterman just sat there instead of correcting the coach on who made the big block. But Doug knows, I can't really take credit for the block now. It's been attributed to a guy who's had a rough go of it.
No, you should probably just let it go.
And that's what Carrie says, just let this go. Like, maybe it'll help Busterman a little bit.
Oh, wait, what do you have a thought?
You're correct. I cannot say that you did not say that correctly. What you didn't necessarily explicitly say is that Carrie essentially says, you know, that pathetic legless loser piece of shit has such a sad, sorry life. You should just let him have this so he has something to live for.
She goes too far in that direction here, essentially. And I get the sense she's just saying whatever to shut Doug up.
Yeah. Right.
Because Doug, of course, pivots at this point to kind of off of that of like, you know, you're right. Wouldn't it be actually worse of me to allow Busterman to take the credit for the block just because she's in a wheelchair? And Carrie at this point just rolls her eyes and says, whatever, do whatever you want.
I've got a sub to prepare.
Yeah, I've got to prepare the sandwich for 6 more hours. So Doug goes into the kitchen to tell Busterman the truth, to tell the team the truth, but he finds an old teammate carrying Busterman upstairs to the bathroom and feels bad.
Why do they not have a bathroom on their ground floor?
I wondered that too. What weird architecture?
If you have 2 stories that are full stories, you have a bathroom on both floors. They don't make them like that. Come on.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's not fair to Jerry Stiller either. Arthur having to walk up all those stairs every time he has to pee, which is probably a lot.
I know, and he lives in the basement, which I
Right,
guess
so
there's
that's
no
a lot
bathroom
of
down
work
there
for him.
either.
How big is this house in Queens that this IPS
Huge.
driver can afford it? Wow.
Meanwhile, in the living room, Spence is talking to Kellner and Cedeno about all the hazing he endured in high school as they try to get past that chapter in their history. Apparently, Spence had his clothing taken while he was showering and was left nude in the girls' locker room, which is, again, just sounds lazy, this whole thing, making it up as a writer. And Spence just casually says, well, I wouldn't let you guys do that again, even if you tried. And they're like, yeah, but like we could if we wanted to. And Spence, he doesn't think they could. And then he ends it by saying, au contraire, mon frere. And they're like, oh, more of this French crap. Essentially hinting that Spence used to speak in French when angered in high school, I guess. Something to that degree. So we see a little bit of conflict emerging again between Spence and his former bullies. Back in the kitchen, Doug comes in the back door as Busterman is creatively getting a glass out of a cabinet. He's in a wheelchair, so he has to knock it down. Doug's kind of impressed by it, and then he starts working on Busterman at this point, saying, well, it's kind of weird you don't remember that big block. If you made it, you'd think you'd remember such an impactful block as that. And Busterman eventually, as Doug won't shut up about it, he's like, you're kind of ringing a bell here. This is actually helping, Doug. Thank you. I thought this was all gone, but now the memory kind of seems clear to me. And for Doug, he's further away from his teammates ever knowing the truth about his big block. Doug mutters that he was glad he could help. He's not. And we cut to a Queens traffic scene. Spence is on a beer run with the dudes, Kellner and Cedeno, and they're jamming out to Mr. Roboto with coordinated lip-synced parts, which are admirably pulled off, I guess.
Patton Oswalt points, and then they say their lines. It's great.
Yeah, and they say domo or whatever, and that Kellner guy, I imagine, says it kind of like domo, or something to that effect.
And then he pulls down the Titantron.
Yeah, they pass one small liquor store, and Spence says, hey, why don't we stop there? Kellner says, well, look, we don't want that. We want the beer we had back in high school, Old John's Lager.
There's no way Old John's Lager is street legal or sold in a real liquor store, right?
No, it's like when they took Four Locos off the shelf, I think it's probably like that.
Okay.
So Kellner says they can't get it at the first place, but then they pass another place called Tom's Beer Warehouse, which really sets off Spence's alarms because surely they would have Old John's Lager, which Kellner so tastefully says is the same going in as it is coming out. That's when they get off on the expressway, and we know something bad is about to happen to Spence. Perhaps the rape
dies.
that Kevin James prevented before.
Yeah, brutally raped and murdered at the end of this King of Queens episode.
And then he returns for the next episode somehow. They just ignore it. We go back to the Heffernan house. Doug is desperate at this point to prove that he made the big block. So he's digging around in the attic trying to find a videotape his mom made of the big game.
I love this part too because, and this might have been part of the joke, but I just thought it was really funny because the box that he's rooting through is called kitchen plates.
Yes.
I just thought that was really funny that he's like, I'm going to find it in this fucking box.
Yeah, he's rooting through a completely unrelated box, and then Carrie comes in to see what he's doing, and he chucks a Christmas ornament box like 70 miles an hour down at her and nearly murders her. She goes up into the attic and immediately finds the tape, and it's labeled Boo Boo's Big Game.
Okay. If you are throwing a party for 20 football friends or whatever, you've got the coach, the alumni reporter, you're going to find this tape first, right?
You would think so, although I guess he expected everyone to...
He just thought he was the hero already.
Yeah, they'd prop him up on a chair, wash his feet, and cool him off with palm fronds because he made this block.
If I invited you guys and your sister Mandy and some friends over to talk about Blood Suction, the movie I made a few years ago, I would have the movie. I wouldn't just be like, nah, we're going to talk about it. That's fine. You just, if you...
What if I was like, well, you know, it wasn't you that made Blood Suction.
You didn't make the big block in Blood Suction.
I would then have to look at my equipment manager and find out what the problem was.
And that's the good part about not having this era to deal with is we don't have to find tapes in the kitchen plates box.
That's
We
true.
can just go on YouTube. You guys should all watch Blood Suction. It is still on YouTube.
That's right. It sure is.
We should
Yeah,
drop
you
that
should.
link. We should drop that link in the episode details here so people can watch this.
I'll do it.
If you enjoy this podcast, you would enjoy watching it. You would be confused at times.
Well, you know, who cares if they enjoy it? They should just watch it.
Yeah,
anyway.
this isn't about enjoyment.
You get to watch Spencer die.
That's
That
true.
happens.
That's true.
Just like what happens to Spence in this King of Queens episode after he is tied up to the
that's
goalpost
awful.
and then halved by a samurai sword by Kellner and Cedeno. After Doug finds the tape, or I guess Carrie finds it technically, we cut back to the living room where the team is about to see the big play in the big game. They've been watching presumably the whole game. The reporter is just down to stay and deal with all of this, apparently.
Even though there's no sub to eat at all yet.
No.
They're still not ready with that sub.
And he wasn't a part of the team, so he has to be just enamored with this story to want to have to get every detail out.
He must have been one of those people who was bullied like at the high school but didn't know it and was infatuated by the jocks or something like that. I'm not really sure what they're aiming for with this Geddy Lee journalist character who stays at the Heffernan house for hours on end. But maybe we're not supposed to know.
Roll the bones.
Doug also tries to play it off like, I didn't work really hard to find this tape to prove anything or anything like that.
He didn't have to, because Carrie found it right in plain view, not in the plates box.
No, not at all. They're also watching the game, and that enables the coach to, again, fawn over Broadnax.
Whoa, look at that boy run like a beautiful black jaguar.
Ew.
So, yeah, that's a little bit uncomfortable, but apparently the team just skips over that because the big play's coming up.
Well, they don't necessarily skip over it. He reaches out and touches the main guy.
Yeah, Broadnax,
the beautiful
yeah.
black jaguar guy. And then the rest of the team's like, oh, here's the big play, trying to push him away from it. So if I want to look a little deeper into this, do you think that something inappropriate went down between the coach and those students?
I
and
think
the other ones are trying to protect each other by just, deflecting.
it is a weird joke to make because they're clearly going for some sort of gay panic joke, but it's doubly weird because this is a coach. He would have known these people when they were in high school.
Yeah. It's not a problem that it's guy on guy. It's a problem that it's teacher on
Man on
child.
boy.
Yes,
Yeah.
man on boy.
Yeah, and if there's anything you probably don't want in any show like this, but definitely not in your CBS sitcom, it's man on boy. They get to the part of the big game when the block happens, and Broadnax breaks loose for the touchdown, and Doug immediately, after watching the play, starts going into, weird, it seems like it was me who made the big block, and the coach says, what are you talking about? The tape shows number 57 made the block, and that's Busterman. And Doug says, but I'm number 61. And they're like, who gives a shit? 57 made the block. Doug then at this point is apoplectic and just has no idea how to handle this news. He didn't make the block? What happened? He starts screaming, it should be number 61, and screams at the reporter to get it right.
Are either of you surprised he didn't make his number 69? Because that seems like a
I
Kevin
am
James
a
thing.
little bit surprised, but I mean, maybe 61 is more of a fat guy number. Maybe that's what he was thinking since he loves those jokes so much. Carrie realizes this is all happening. She stands up to try and break the tension. from the snack table at this point, asks, who wants a sandwich?
Which I have not finished making.
Which is just, it's a work in progress. It's her Mona Lisa.
And we're hours into the party at this point.
Yeah.
They've watched a whole game. She makes Doug come into the kitchen to help with the sandwich, presumably to get him away from his teammates.
Right.
And Carrie also does utter a line I legitimately enjoyed here for some reason, which is, I hope you're all wearing your hungry hats.
Because every single football player is just...
Yeah, they're all glazed over like,
It's
why
pretty
is
great.
your husband, why is he gone mad? Like Edgar Allan Poe or something. Back in the kitchen, Doug is pleading to Carrie that he really did make this block. He does not know what happened. Carrie doesn't really believe that. She thinks he's misremembering like she might with like a parking space or something like that. She's trying to be nice, but Doug starts descending into conspiracy theories that maybe Busterman had caused to alter the tape. So he's really gone off the deep end. Spence comes in, and we find out that, yes, he was again detained and left at the liquor store off the expressway by Kellner and Cedeno.
And not killed and raped.
He's still alive, and his butt is presumably okay. However, it is upsetting. They didn't break new ground on their friendship.
No.
Kellner,
They
Cedeno,
manipulated
and
him.
Spence.
By the way, that's an interesting process there that they did with this. I thought that was kind of fascinating that these bullies, these high school bullies, that they were saying, hey, you know, we're aware that what we did was wrong. Turns out, actually, it went way deeper, and they're actually just assholes, like psychopath assholes.
Yeah, they're just really bad,
Like, they're just
sad
people who will do whatever it takes throughout their entire lives to make you think one thing and not do the other. So that went a lot deeper than bullying in that sense. Those were bad characters.
Perhaps, again, another sign of the audience of the message of these guys aren't actually grown up. They're still stuck in the past. That's kind of the ongoing theme here, which that's admirable enough. So Spence recounts all this punishment he's recently taken from the bullies, and Doug ignores all of the outpouring Spence is trying to do. Spence is upset. He tried to reach out and make friends, and it didn't work. And Doug interrupts him and says, hey, let's talk about this block in the big game, because Doug is nothing if not abhorrently selfish. So Spence actually kind of makes his memory go click and says, hey, don't you remember I was locked in the janitor's closet by Kellner and Cedeno before the big game. By the time I got out, I was so frazzled I accidentally switched you and Busterman's uniforms.
I do like the joke that Patton makes here kind of offhandedly. It might have even been an improv, the way it was read. He says something like, don't you remember? I was stuffed naked into this thing. Always naked.
Yeah,
Why?
that was another good line reading, of which there are several, because the cast, by and large, pretty talented.
Definitely.
Patton Oswalt being, of course, the most talented person that we're seeing on screen here.
I was kind of impressed by the wide guy who chews his gum too much.
Yeah, I like that
Pretty
chew gum
good.
all the time. He was actually very magnetizing to me because, again, I just felt like he was going to walk up to me and be like, hey, watch where you're going, and like elbow me or something. I don't know.
Even though there's no one in the room and he had to approach you to do it, you're in the way.
Yeah, he says the word hoagie a lot. I get that sense. Spence doesn't want to. He doesn't want to see these guys ever again, but Doug urges him to go in the living room and tell him what really happened. It was me that made the block. So Doug drags Spence into the living room to make the announcement.
This
right
is
as we
actually
see...
This is a pretty well done comedic thing here.
It is. Right as we see Carrie telling the team, Doug's been under a lot of pressure at work, trying to do some retcon work. And Spence does not tell the team that Doug made the block right away. He immediately goes on a rant about how much he hated all the bullying in high school and begins his sentiment with "you bastards" and ends it with "you can go to hell, all of you." So it was a nice little Patton Oswalt rage moment. And at the end, he's just like, "Oh yeah, Doug made that block."
And there you go, the show's over.
Yeah, essentially Doug's like, "Oh, not that it matters or anything," expecting everyone to just be like, "Oh, you did make the block," but they see Spence as a raving lunatic, just like with Doug. So even as Doug pleads with the reporter again to get his name right, we know nobody's buying his story.
And as the reporter, I have a really good story at this point, which is this guy who did make this block is a fucking psycho.
Yeah, you have a character
I
profile
would
you
love
can write.
to just rewrite that entire story.
It would be a much more intriguing story, and one that is also much darker, and one that
Very much
includes
so.
potentially some sort of child sex ring operated by a football coach at St. Gregory, which is a Catholic school, I'm just saying. Well, we pan back to the Heffernan kitchen. Doug and Carrie are seated at opposite ends of the giant
And
sandwich.
they're finally getting this sandwich done. When I saw them eating that, I was like, oh, I want to help them so bad.
I thought that sandwich looked gross.
Well, earlier Carrie
try
says
it.
she's using rotten bologna from the back of the fridge.
Aren't they throwing condiments back at each other like across the table?
Mustard.
Yeah, he asked her to shoot him the mustard, and that's how the episode ends. She does, in fact, shoot Kevin James that mustard. And that is it. That is blockbuster. Kevin James does not get his glory.
Well, he kind of did. Like, in his own mind.
Everyone thinks he's nuts, though.
It just
Well,
stopped.
it was worth it to him. I don't think he cared about what they thought about him.
Yeah.
He just wanted them to know, hey, I did that block.
This would be traumatic, this whole experience for a lot of
It
people.
was a terrible party.
yeah,
It's
the
like
worst
this-
one I've ever seen.
No, I hated that the show just stopped. They didn't do
Yeah,
anything
you don't
past
like
it.
the jarring endings. You don't like the abrupt.
I can if it makes sense. Looking back, I can see that the Columbo one certainly made sense. This one just stopped. What it looks like to me is that they were sitting in the writer's room like, what can we do this episode? I got an idea. Football game where they don't remember he does his thing, and then the writers go, oh, okay, we're done. We can just stop. They didn't write comeuppance. They didn't write closure. They didn't really write anything. They just kind of stopped it.
This is interesting that you say this because I did what I always do where I'm not really sure which episode I'm supposed to be watching when we get assigned these. So I watched the episode before this because I love Peacock very much, but it's hard to see where your cursor is on the
It's
episode.
It is.
horrible.
but-
Why can no one make a good
No one has a good interface.
The interface is a problem. But
HBO Max is terrible, too.
Yeah, it's not just
Hulu.
Peacock by any means.
Yeah.
I love Peacock. But I accidentally watched the episode before this one, and I was stunned. Real quickly here, broad strokes. Doug throws a bachelor party, and I forget if it's his cousin or someone like that, but he throws a bachelor party because Carrie is insistent that he do it to be nice, and it goes horribly. And there's nothing they talk about. It just at the end, it's like that didn't work, and the episode ends. So I was like,
So
wow.
that does seem to be constant with King
Maybe
of
that's
Queens.
just what they do in that show.
Just seems lazy, right?
I feel like the series should have just ended with Doug at a therapist of like, here are all of the myriad embarrassing situations I've been in that went horribly wrong where everyone hated me.
They just write a premise and then stop. They get 65% of the way there and they go, all right, good enough. Let's move on to the next show. What else can Doug and Carrie get into?
Yeah, and we'll talk about the show more at large and what we think of the series in general on our second King of Queens episode, which will be coming up, of course, later in this week. For now, let's shift gears a little bit, if you
Okay.
guys want to.
I'll
Do you guys
shift a
want
gear
to?
or two if you're not more than two.
Yeah, let's shift gears because we've received a few iTunes reviews. So I wanted to give a little bit of credit, a little shout out to the people who've taken the time to give us a review on iTunes. If you've got the time, please do that.
Super important. That actually gets you more exposure than just about anything else
Anything.
you can do. Apple Podcasts or iTunes, whatever you want to call it, their reviews are some of the most important things you could do. So if you like a show, not just ours, if there's a show out there that you like, leave a rate and review because it's big.
Definitely so. And while we're kind of in that just news and notes and housekeeping area, I'll go ahead and say if you really like our show, which who doesn't, right, guys? You can also follow us on Patreon. You can be a Boob Tube child. You can be a Boob Tube adult. Those are our two levels.
Whatever suits your mood, man.
Yeah, for as little as $2 a month, you
We
get.
know which one the coach would be. It's a boob tube adult.
Yeah,
Just so we can
with a
pat all
Boob
their
Tube child.
asses.
Yeah. For as little as $2 a month, though, you'll get a bonus episode each week where we talk about whatever we feel like. We have a good time on there, so go to patreon.com/Bootu Inc. and follow us on there. You can also find every single one of us and the show on Twitter. The Twitter account for the show is @Boob Tube Boys. I'm at Loud Guitar. Brian, Van, what are you?
At Manly Van Lee.
Spencer?
I am at the number 3 French_hen.
Hell yeah. And you can also now check out supplemental content and more at boobtubeboys.com.
Ooh, we'll all take turns writing stuff,
Yeah.
posting things. I
It's
haven't
gonna
even
be
touched
fun.
it yet. I've been busy, but I'm going to get on that. It's going to be fun.
Yeah, we're gonna have that. We're gonna have that active for you guys. We're gonna do at least a post or two a week where we kind of give you some extra content on the episodes that we drop for that week. So that's gonna be something that's really fun and it gives us a different angle to approach these things. So we're excited about that.
We are. We have our arms elbow deep in making Boob Tube Boy stuff right now. much as the football team coach for St. Gregory's might be elbow deep in any one of his players.
Ew.
Yeah, I shouldn't have said that, but I did anyway. So let's get on to these iTunes reviews. The first one comes from someone whose screen name is AKJ519.
Who could that be?
Oh, I've never met her, that's for
Yeah,
sure.
this might be someone...
You just strictly
I've
put
never
a gender
met him
right
or
on
her.
that. There you
Yeah,
go.
this is an awesome person.
I like them already.
Yeah, just a
Just the
great
username.
person who might be a mother soon. AKJ519 says, listening to the Boob Tube Boys reminisce about shows I've long forgotten brings a sense of nostalgia, and it's also entertaining. Even episodes about a show I've never seen prove totally interesting. I also learned tons about the shows, the actors, and some behind-the-scenes facts I would not otherwise know. I will definitely keep listening and laughing and highly recommend others do the same. 5 stars. So thank you, AKJ519.
Thank
Whoever
you.
you are.
Now, whoever you might be, we know who that is. It's my sister.
No, that's not true.
These other ones, though, we don't know. So we'd like to also thank GS4Life with a Y.
Wait, what?
Yeah. GS4Life
I wonder
with a
what
Y.
GS means. Grand
Good
Slam.
stuff.
God Santa.
General Skywalker.
Well, there we go.
Could be.
It's Hayden Christensen. He just loves our show.
That would be awesome.
I would like that.
Likes our show more than sand, that's for sure. GS4Life says, these guys are definitely having fun watching these old shows, and it's hard not to laugh along with them. I really like that they're giving out the episode info in advance, and I can watch the show they're going to talk about before the podcast comes out. I just finished Columbo, and wow, that bald guy was nuts. Keep up the good work.
I want to say this
5
is
stars.
this is a great. Oh, of course, 5 stars. That's what we always get, guys. So I have to say this is a great time to read that these guys always have so much fun reviewing these after an episode in which Van did not have as much fun as he usually has on these.
Yeah, that's a good point. No, I enjoyed this. I didn't enjoy watching King of Queens. I enjoyed talking to you about it.
That's good.
Of course, that is the duality we live in.
Also, did they mean that bald guy was wild? Are they talking Donald Pleasance or Spencer?
Well, there's no
I've
way to
never
know.
bashed my younger brother's head in with the phone
Yet.
over a wine
Yeah.
Give
industry.
it time.
You are always screaming about the Marino brothers.
You were in Puma Man.
I mean, wouldn't you? 69 cents a gallon. Ridiculous.
Liquid filth. And the coolest username ever, Holy Diver Dio Fan 66669 Forever.
Who knows Van, apparently, right?
Yeah,
Like,
says, I know Van from the fantasy
Who is
sports
this
stuff.
guy?
I genuinely don't know. The true story, I have no
well, that's
clue
cool,
this
though.
is.
I'm glad he commented, or she.
I know Van from the fantasy sports stuff, but always like the goofy stuff they do on the Nasty Cast, so I gave this a shot and it's great. Lots of shows to cover. Could I suggest some of those hospital procedurals like Grey's Anatomy or ER?
I like how you think.
Yeah, you definitely can suggest that, and you know what? We'll take you up on that. That's a great suggestion. So thank you to all the people reviewing and rating our show. Please, anyone who's listening who hasn't, will you go do that for us?
Yeah, especially thanks goes out to Holy Diver Fan Forever 69.
6666.
Yeah.
Yeah,
That was
just
great.
an amazing name. So that's what people are saying on the internet about us. It's all just glowing.
Sounds good. Do you
Yeah.
guys feel like you're as good as the reviews?
I mean,
The
we must.
scuttlebutt
I don't
is
know if I
awesome.
can live up to this pressure. I
Yeah.
don't know. I think
We-
we should just fold it in now. We've done good enough.
We're done.
We
Great
leave,
run, guys.
We leave on top. So that's it for us this week. We'll be back later in the week where we discuss Season 6, Episode 7, Secret Garden
Oh,
of
yeah.
King of Queens.
Van, how do you feel about doing another King of Queens?
I think I'm going to enjoy the recording of that episode even more because I despised watching it even more than I did this first one. I
Oh,
don't
that's
know.
a good teaser.
I don't
That's
know.
a
I
good teaser.
really didn't like this episode we just covered. I'm trying to think. The next one almost felt bland to me, but it had its infuriating moments.
To end this episode, I'd like to end by asking Van to describe Kevin James in one word.
Meaty.
'Cause maybe all my life I will be driving home to you.